Welcome, Drink with James, episode 174. I am coming to you at like 4:15 on a Friday afternoon. So unfortunately for Brian, he has to turn this thing around pretty quickly. But I just got back from being out of town for like a week. I was in Dallas. Never been to Dallas before. So like go down there. And I don't even really bother to check the weather. I'm going to Texas. Like, it's warm in New York. I just brought like a blazer. Get off the plane, walk into the jetway. You can see your breath. It's fucking freezing in Dallas. It was so cold. I was cold the entire time I was there. We were really there for one meeting, and then we went to Uchi for dinner, which if you've been to Austin or Dallas and been to Uchi, it's fantastic. I can't suggest it enough. Although beer and wine only, which like is honestly a little bit annoying. I think they said their first location was beer and wine only, so they just kind of did that as like a tradition. I think that's a tradition that, you know, some traditions you can move on from. So if the owner of Uchi is watching this, I implore you, please get a liquor license for your Dallas location. I promise it'll be better if we can have a Negroni while burning through 20 courses of Japanese food. Okay, a few little things to start off, and then we've got a little different episode. Today's episode is all about fighting. Everything in the episode is fights people are having with me, fights people are having with each other, fights the brands are having with influencers. So we've got lots of kind of tea to spill today. But before that, few things. One, interested to see how many people likes are hidden for. So I had likes turned off. I mean, it's a bit of a, it's kind of only halfway there. And this is actually something we heard from some influencers who we interviewed in Australia, which is like, it doesn't totally count, because until likes are turned off for everyone, you're not going to get the full effect of knowing people aren't seeing your likes. So like right now, as I scroll through my Instagram, I don't see like counts. But most of the people in our office, I think it's only 25% of the people in the office right now have likes turned off. So 75% of people are still seeing likes. So in my head, I still know that most people are seeing the like count. So it's I don't think for me it's changing my behavior yet. Again, interested to see as they roll it out more broadly. But drop a line in the comments if you are turned off so far, and interested to hear again in the comments if you feel like it's changed your behavior at all since likes have been turned off. But we are certainly watching that roll out, and we'll be watching the data to see if people's behavior is changing. Another thing, someone had asked a question about some of their stories randomly getting a lot more views than other ones. And I think it's just something we haven't talked about, but Instagram recently started integrating stories into the Explore page. So if you see a story that did particularly well, that is probably why. If you go to the Explore page, you can kind of see what stuff is making in there. I weirdly had like 3 or 4 pieces of content from accounts that were fingerboard accounts. You guys know what a fingerboard is? It is a tiny skateboard that you ride with your fingers through a tiny skate park. I do not follow any fingerboard content, so I'm not sure how it's getting into my feed. But I will say this, there were some decently compelling stories there, and I might be at a place to start following a few fingerboard accounts soon. So as always, it's worth jumping into Explore and seeing what's there. Obviously, what is on your Explore page is totally custom for you based on your behavior and who you follow and what people are liking. But always worth checking that out to see what is landing in there. Since the Explore page, while it doesn't have the power it did 5 years ago, it still certainly has some power to move the needle for you. Okay, let's get into the meat here. So 3 things, as I said, 3 kind of arguments I saw people having on the internet this week that I want to comment on. The first is I wouldn't say it was an argument, but it was a back and forth I was having with two influencers. It was Kathy from Poor Little It Girl and Kara from Politics of Pretty. We'll put up somewhere the tweets so you can see them, and it's worth going through and probably reading the thread. Basically, it started with Kathy asking, saying, I, on Drink with James, give advice that influencers should be getting paid, but on our bulletin, bulletin is a tool that we have on Fohr for brands to offer kind of opportunities. It is not a place to get paid, but it's kind of specifically for opportunities, event attendance, a gifting opportunity, a hotel night for trade. So it was kind of built specifically for that. But there was a question that all of these things were unpaid, and I talk about getting paid, and was that disingenuous? Was it right that Fohr has a product that helps brands engage with influencers for gifting and exchange opportunities, while I, again, to their point of view, while I was preaching that influencers should be getting paid. First of all, I always appreciate some pushback. I always appreciate getting called out, and I love that Fohr is important enough for people to take time out of their day to raise a concern about it. It's the only way that we're going to get better, and I think that this interaction showed me, one, that we maybe weren't being clear enough about what bulletin was, and that maybe I wasn't being clear about my thoughts about gifting. So let me clear up a few of those things first. As I mentioned in the Twitter thread, I am not against gifting. I don't like unboxings, though I do think they can be done well. I am not against influencers doing things for trade. There is, I would say, 75% of the clients that we close at Fohr, we're doing stuff for free for them before we take their money. And if you look at a sales process, I used to kind of talk about this process a lot, and I say it starts with a relationship, and then it goes to validation, and then there's an opportunity, and that is kind of, from that opportunity, that's how you end up closing a sale. One of the hardest parts of that process is the validation part, right? If a brand doesn't know who you are and you reach out to them, okay, now you've potentially built a relationship. How are you getting validated? They don't know you. They don't know if what you do is valuable or not. And there's ways to do that other than working for free. But the easiest way to prove to a brand that you care about that brand, that you're a customer, and that you are a good fit for them is to do posts for free. It is 100% the easiest way to get a brand's attention. And I argue the point that once you do something for free for a brand, they won't value you and you won't get paid. I think there are some brands that is certainly true. There's some brands that are never going to pay you. It's just never going to happen. And if you do a free post for them, they will take that free post and say thank you, and they will never pay you. But again, when I used to do this stuff, when I used to shoot, when I was a photographer, I did a lot of work for free that I then transitioned into paid work. And I think that a gifting opportunity is probably an influencer's best chance to take a new client to a paid client by doing a great job with that and being really strategic about how you move them through that funnel. How do you move them from unpaid to paid? And so if there is a feeling that I do not believe in influencers doing work for trade, then I have not been really clear about my feelings, and I apologize for that. The other thing is, our bulletin tool and what it does. It is not designed to allow brands to pay influencers. We have other tools that brands can use to pay influencers. We have probably paid influencers $30 million or more. Obviously, I believe in influencers getting paid. As I stated in this tweet, I've built my entire career on trying to help influencers make a living doing this. Some of my favorite moments of running this company are when influencers come up to me and say, hey, they quit their job because of Fohr, because of the work that they've been able to get through here. So again, Obviously, I am not for brands taking advantage of influencers, but it's such a small percentage of our community that we get to work with on a paid basis that we wanted to give clients a way to engage up-and-coming influencers, micro-influencers on gifting and trade deals, and that is why we built Bulletin. So far, it's been super successful. We again, we're not. It's totally opt-in, and it's totally up to you if you want to do these things or not. These opportunities come from our clients, not from us. Again, when we work with our clients, we only do that on paid campaigns. But that tool is there to help people that are just kind of, who are looking to build more brand relationships. It's there to help them do that. And if you're at a point in your career where you're not taking paid work, one, I would say that it's probably not a line to draw completely. Again, talk to Adelia. Chriselle Lim does shit for free for brands, and I guarantee she's making more money than most people in this space. So I don't think anyone should be drawing a line and saying, I do not do free work. I do not take gifting campaigns. But if you're at a place in your career where you don't, you don't want to do that, great. Good for you. Then don't do it. And that's awesome, and you've kind of graduated. But that's not for everyone, and we need to have tools at Fohr that help influencers that are still building their businesses. And that's a big part of what Bulletin is. And I feel like there's this feeling that it's there to take advantage of people, and that's just not it at all. There was a comment that maybe the language was a little bit misleading. So we're going to look at that language and revamp it and be a bit more clear about what these opportunities are. But I will go on record and say that I think gifting is absolutely an incredible tool for influencers to validate themselves to brands and move clients that are not paying them to clients that are. Beef number 2. So I follow this guy, Andrew. His Instagram is NYC Film Locations. He's a location scout in New York. He's got 23,000 followers. He does a lot of work for very cool brands. I follow him because he finds really cool places in New York as a location scout. And as we are in a creative business and we are, giving our clients strategic recommendations, sometimes some of the locations that I see on his on his feed are potentially places that we would want to shoot someday. I find him to be a great resource to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of kind of what's happening in New York as far as locations go. This week he did a post that said, hey, I've been trying to get paid by this brand for 3 months. They haven't paid me. They're disputing the fact that they owe me this money. I did 16 days of work, and on Friday at 4 p.m., I'm going to publish who the client is, who the director is, who did production, everyone. I am going to expose everyone who's screwing me out of this money in 3 days. And then through his stories, he put paid money behind that post, which is hilarious. And then through his stories, he kind of showed screenshots of the emails, showing how he was following up. He did a bunch of things to kind of show that he had done this work, and kind of kept telling the story. He had a big countdown in his stories saying when he was going to expose people. And look, that shit is entertaining to watch. We actually just hit the time when he was supposed to reveal the name, and apparently the company that owed him the money, the legal team, reached out and said that they wanted to talk to him on Monday. So he said he's pausing on it right now, and we'll see what happens Monday. I think that I used to freelance, right? I used to do photography. I have a lot of friends that are influencers, photographers, creatives. Getting paid is 100% is just a huge pain in the ass. And big companies will often take advantage of you and try not to pay you. I'll tell you this, most companies, especially a smaller resource-constrained company, it is 100% in their best interest to delay your payment as long as possible. And a lot of times, they won't pay you unless you're bothering them, unless you're following up. And that's frustrating, but if you think about a company that has a lot of people to pay, if they can hold your payment a week, that's someone else that they can pay who's bothering them, who's emailing them every day about it. And they 100% do not do a first in, first out, right? They're not saying, well, I said I would pay this in 30 days. It's 30 days, I'm paying it. For a lot of smaller companies, if you're not following up, they're going to wait maybe 60 days to pay you. It's what we call the time value of money. The longer you can hold on to it, the more valuable it is. So there's a real incentive for companies to hold on to your money. I will say this, Andrew's strategy, while interesting and fun to watch because I love drama and gossip, it is a dangerous strategy to pursue. I think with him, he did a good job of showing how much work he had done to try and get paid before resulting to this. Going to social and putting a company on blast absolutely should be the last thing you do. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I think there's 100% of time and place. And if you have gone through all of the appropriate avenues you could to get it done, then absolutely you should do that. But I would start, if it's me and I've reached out to the person and they haven't said anything. When I couldn't get paid once, I had 6 or 7 invoices for this brand that were due that they weren't paying. I just called the main number and asked to get connected to accounting. I went around the person that I was working with at the brand and went straight to accounting, and that was helpful. You can email accounting at whatever the brand name is, whatever their URL is. You can try that. You can go to LinkedIn and try and find their CFO on LinkedIn and send them a message, send their CEO a message. I guarantee if we've ever been late on a payment, I get an email, that's not an email I like to receive as a CEO, and I immediately forward it to my CFO and the account person and say, what the hell is going on? Why am I getting this email? So that gets things done. So if you're hitting a wall with the person that you're working with, go around that wall first. Do not then go to social. So if you've done that, if you've emailed the CEO and the CFO and you've hit people up on LinkedIn and all of these things, and you're still not getting it, I would then email all of those people again and say, hey, my next step is I'm going to have to take this to social. And I'm going to have to talk about this on social media. That's not a threat. That's just giving them one more chance to keep this private, right? Because you do risk the chance of kind of looking unprofessional, which is not fair at all because it's the brand that is being unprofessional, not you. But you risk the chance of looking unprofessional when you bring this to social. So give them that one more chance and say, that's my next step. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do with you people, but next step is it goes on social. And then, I think you can post it. I think you can put brands on blast if you feel like they're doing something wrong or they're not paying you. But give them the chance. Give them the opportunity first. When I was younger and maybe not as reserved as I am now, I remember putting a company that we worked with on blast on Twitter before I really complained through the appropriate outlet. The CEO ended up calling me and I felt embarrassed, honestly. I didn't really think about the fact that they would see that. I don't know what I felt like. It just sometimes feels fun to complain. And I kind of felt like shit afterwards. Even though they took care of it, I felt like I didn't give them the chance to do the right thing before I did a classless thing, which was to just put someone on blast on Twitter without trying the appropriate method. So I'll tell you this, I will be watching what's happening Monday to see if they make it good. The dramatic gossip lover in me wants legal to not pay this guy so that he releases the names, but I'm sure this will work and he will get his money. Last one is Grace Atwood sent me a link to an article on Article of Style's blog. Article of Style is a custom menswear shop in New York run by a guy named Dan, who used to be a menswear blogger. And apparently it was kind of making the rounds on Reddit over the weekend or last week. And, he got, an influencer reached out to him and asked to be paid for a post. And Dan kind of wrote this big, long post about, his advice for fashion influencers. And you know what? Most of it was pretty in line with what we talk about here. And Dan's a smart guy, and he's been in this industry for a long time. And I think a lot of the advice in it is pretty solid. He talks about, doing a better job describing your offer. Instead of saying, hey, pay me, say exactly what you're going to do. He talked about, telling the brand who your audience is, giving them a sense of who are these people? Are they 35-year-old guys that are really into style who have disposable income, or are they, just following you for a distraction? He talked about, becoming more focused, what we talk about, essentially honing your craft, right? If you're into men's style, really work to understand men's style. Understand, how the clothes are constructed, what makes them special, who the players are, what the history is. I think that's great advice. He talks about not blaming the algorithm, which again, obviously we talk about all the time. It's not the algorithm's fault. You need to be out there creating value for your followers and creating great content. And there's a lot of people that are doing really well on the algorithm, and so it's probably more a you thing than an algorithm thing. I think for me, and I would say this to Dan, and maybe Dan, if you see this, maybe you should come on the show and we should talk about it. I think that for me, where it missed was, one, the tone was super condescending. To me, it sounded a bit like a grandpa being like, rap isn't music because there's no instruments, so it can't be music. And it's like, well, no, rap is music, and a guitar does not, a song doesn't have to have a guitar in it for it to be music. And I think that Dan came up at a time in the internet when it was all about your knowledge. Being an influencer was about how knowledgeable you are, and that world has changed, right? And it's not as important to have an encyclopedic knowledge about menswear to be a menswear influencer. And I sometimes miss that world, but that world is gone. So, I think that some of the arguments he was making felt like someone just lamenting the passing of the torch, the fact that the world is kind of a different place. It's like people being like, oh man, it's like those memes about people enjoying themselves without their phones, right? And it's usually two animals ripping a zebra carcass apart or something. But the point is, it's the world has changed, right? You can say, oh, childhood used to be so much more pure without phones, but it's cool, but phones are here. So what the fuck are you gonna do? The world has changed. And I think that, a few parts that didn't resonate, and we'll put a link to the article up because I think you should read it, because again, I think on the whole, it's really good advice. There was a part about ROI, which I thought was just a little reductionist in its view of advertising, essentially arguing that every single piece of advertising you do has to tie directly to a sale. But what then about television, about print, about radio, about anything else? Of course, advertising needs to drive sales, but a sales funnel is a large, long, complicated thing, and it takes at least generally 7 touches for someone to become a customer, at least. And so the idea that a post from an influencer has to generate twice as much sales as the post cost is fucking ridiculous, honestly, and is a pretty naive view of advertising, if you ask me. He also says there's a big bubble coming, and if you have over 1 million followers, it's going to zero. Again, that's a pretty dumb comment, honestly, and just not true. There is no bubble in the influencer marketing. Will there at some point be a correction in the market? Yes, I absolutely think so. The market is growing. It's growing really quickly. And like every single fucking market ever, it will hit a place where it's the peak and there will be a drop. And then it'll kind of steady. It'll it'll level out, right? And then it'll kind of probably level out and continue to grow a bit again. And then there'll be new things that come along that pick away at that ad spend. And yes, over time, the market will grow to a point, and then over time it'll shrink. That is free market economics. Like, that is every fucking market. But calling it a bubble it's again, it sounds like the hope of someone. I hope it's a bubble because I can't wait for these fucking influencers to just like lose everything. Like, that's the tone. And it's like, it's not helpful, and it's not really very intelligent. And I know Dan's a smarter guy than that. Influencers have completely changed media. They've totally changed the way people interact with storytelling and with brands and the way they consume content. And that is just like not gonna change, right? Like, brands have advertising dollars and they're gonna continue to spend them, and they need to find places to spend them. And as we said before, money follows attention. And as long as people are paying attention to influencers and to these social platforms, brands will be paying them. Unlike until there's something else that catches our attention, this is the reality. So, to say there's a bubble, again, is more of it generally is coming from people that they want to wish that into existence. It's not a real thing. So, on the whole, I would go read the article, but I think that there is 100% a place to criticize and critique influencers, and they absolutely can do a better job of pitching themselves and running their businesses effectively. We're actually doing a For You about this on Wednesday. So if you're in New York and you want to come to that, maybe we'll put a link somewhere, right? For you to come to our For You. It's all about running your business more effectively. You can critique someone without disrespecting them. And I hate the critique pieces of influencers because they're filled with so much hate and spite and disrespect. And these are people trying to build a business, and again, sometimes the way they do that may be inelegant, but wishing their destruction is a pretty fucked up response to somebody reaching out asking to work with your brand. So, Dan, if this gets to you, we know each other. We both love suits. Would love to have you on the show to talk this out at some point. And we can have a little fight in person, which I don't know that we've really done on Drink with James, but would be great. We wouldn't really fight. Yeah, maybe, yeah. We'll both get our fingerboards and see who can do better tricks. Anyway, Fight Club, Drink with James Fight Club edition is over. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to go enjoy my weekend now. Cheers.